Galactus, Super Shenron, Gurren Lagann, Lovecraftian deities, true form Darkseid. When thinking of cosmically large characters, a few immediately come to mind as dwarfing worlds, galaxies, universes, or any concept of measurable distance. But one has always stuck with me in particular. As a lifelong Transformers fan, the Chaos Bringer himself, Unicron. Despite how much I like this guy though, and how much he is brought up amongst the largest characters ever, he doesn't have an official size. So today, I am here to go through every incarnation of Unicron, and do my best to determine how large they are. So let's do that. I will be using all official sources I am able to find for these characters, so let's not waste time. Generation 1. Generation 1 features two primary incarnations of Unicron that are well known. Those being the Unicron from the Generation 1 animated movie and series and the Marvel Comics. Both have exactly one frame of reference. We'll begin with the cartoon. For the 1986 film, a height chart was created showing the size of Unicron relative to Cybertron and Earth, that's Earth there. When compared, the rings of Unicron are ever so slightly taller than the height of Earth, specifically 1.07 times taller, so really not much of anything. Measuring it out, the diameter of Unicron's primary body is 2.05 times smaller than the diameter of his rings, giving his main body a diameter of 6,197.25 kilometers, nearly twice the size of the moon. But that's how big his planet mode is. How big is his robot mode? Well, thankfully, the movie gives us an extended transformation sequence with which to gauge how big he should be. We can see from his transformation that each of his forearms can be measured here to around 2.3 times smaller than his overall diameter. Using this, we can gauge that just Unicron's forearm would be 2,694.01 kilometers long. Using this latest shot of Unicron standing atop Cybertron, Unicron's whole body is about 6.58 times taller than his forearm. We're not including the fist, as that wasn't present in the shot we previously measured. Ergo, Unicron would stand at roughly 17,732.773 kilometers. That is slightly taller than the diameter of the Earth. But this is taking into account only this height chart, which may not even be consistent with the film. Jazz outright calls Unicron a ginormous, weird-looking planet, solidly placing him out of the category of the average-sized, weird-looking planet. No Transformer ever acts like Earth is a particularly big planet, but they do act like Unicron is, implying that Unicron's planet mode could be bigger than Earth. We will ignore that though and say that this is the size of Unicron based on this chart, but there's another option that would make it even bigger. You see, Unicron's body is treated on the same size class as Cybertron, and we're not going to measure out like all the times Unicron and Cybertron interact in G1 because they're usually super inconsistent with each other. Instead, we'll say they're roughly the same size as we go to look at the Marvel Comics. The other main frame of reference is that Cybertron is placed at roughly Saturn size. Saturn, ignoring its rings, which we can assume would be comparable to the size of Unicron's ring, has a diameter of 116,460 kilometers, roughly 10 times that of Earth. Assuming he transforms the same, because the comics use basically the same design for Unicron as the film, this Unicron would have a size of 333,237.927077 kilometers. This also tells us that a G1 style Unicron should be roughly 2.86 times taller than his own planetary form. At this size, Marvel's G1 Unicron would stand at 26 times taller than Earth, which is fucking terrifying. But that'll do for G1 for now. Now we move on to still G1 with IDW comics. IDW is simple. Here's him holding Earth. Some cool king guy I know calc this for me. It puts Unicron at about 61,163.8 kilometers tall, roughly 5 times the size of Earth, which, yeah, that looks about right. And if you're wondering, I've seen people spread around solar system sized Unicron. That is from this panel where he consumes a supermassive black hole. Very clearly the black hole is bigger than Unicron. Finally, free from G1, we move into, wait, no, never mind. Last second while doing this, the same guy again, the true MVP, came to me with this statement from the UK Marvel Comics. And if you're wondering, yes, the UK Marvel Comics are a separate continuity to the US Marvel Comics. In this letter, we see writer Simon Furman stating that Cybertron is bigger than any planet in our solar system. That would imply a size equivalent to that of Jupiter. So if we were to apply that to UK Unicron and use the same transformation as the cartoon, again, I think that's pretty alright, then Unicron in the UK Marvel Comics continuity would be an impressive 399,885.2 kilometers tall, which, yeah, that's taller than the Saturn one. Okay, now Unicron Trilogy. We're beyond G1 at last. This one is extremely hard to gauge the size for, as we see Unicron relative to a lot of planets like Blizzard Planet, but those planets don't have sizes. We do see here in linkage that, well, Unicron is of a similar size to Cybertron. So how big Cybertron? Well, it's really hard to know for certain, but we can make a guess. In the Energon cartoon, we see all of the Cybertron city worlds firing off beams from their towers. Beams that are relatively the same size to each other, but also the same size relative to their worlds, which implies that Cybertron and Earth would be of a similar scale. Taking that into account, Unicron... I might have explained that weirdly, but basically, all the beams are proportionally the same size to their worlds as each other. So when all the beams are the same size, this is really hard to explain. If these worlds were different sizes and these beams were the same size as shown later, then the perspective would be all fucked up. Fuck it. Taking that into account, Unicron in this panel, as calced again by that awesome king fella, would be around 9,101 kilometers tall, almost as big as Earth, which, yeah. Moving on to the films, I'm going to be ignoring them. You see, Last Night gives us nothing to go off of for how much of Earth's lower layers is Unicron, and Rise of the Beast, I just don't really feel much like pixel scaling because I don't know all the details on how to angsize that and shit. But also, we haven't seen the guy transform yet, and we're pretty likely to get that in the future. So I'm leaving this door open for a future video once more films are out. Then there's the aligned continuity. Unicron here makes up the core of the Earth. Now we can't say for certain how big his body would be if it was to uncurl from that state, but the core of the Earth is around 3,485 kilometers, making him a big boy. Surprisingly, that's actually our last stop for normal references to Unicron's size. He doesn't really feature in Robots in Disguise, Animated, or a lot of other non-G1 Transformers media, but we will now look at some weirdo references for Unicron's size, because I think it'd be funny. Probably the most blatant one is this official Hobby Japan size chart. This is Unicron. This is Jupiter for a size reference. So pixel scaling, Unicron is like 227,925.75 kilometers tall. One of the tallest Unicrons and the biggest official height you could say he actually has. The next one we'll use is the HasLab Unicron, which features this tiny figure of the Autobot shuttle, and some slug figures or minifigures of Transformers characters. Now, the shuttles are likely intended to scale with Unicron, but these minifigures absolutely don't, as they scale with the Titan-class Autobot Ark. Assuming that this Autobot shuttle is the same size as the Ark, then all we need is to know how big the Ark is. The Autobot Ark figure is 42.3 centimeters long from front to back, while the Optimus Prime minifigure is roughly 1 centimeter tall. I measured it myself. Optimus Prime's official size in G1 is about 6 meters tall, making the Ark roughly 253.8 meters long. So assuming the shuttle is the same size, that doesn't matter, because I don't own HasLab Unicron to know how big the shuttle is actually, I just realized that. But I do own the Galvatron pack, which includes the Revenge, a similarly sized ship. That is about 5.1 centimeters long. Unicron is about 68.6 centimeters tall. So assuming the Revenge is the same length as the Autobot Ark, then based on the HasLab Unicron figure, the character stands at roughly 3,412 meters tall, or about 3.4 kilometers. So, not that big honestly. For reference, that's only a little bit taller than where the Super Robots guide pegs Fortress Maximus, who is meant to be a whole city standing up. That is a small planet. And I think that's about it. That's the Unicron lottery. So who's the biggest Unicron? None of these. Because you see, Unicron's truest form goes beyond any of them. Now there are pockets of speculation you could use, like Unicron's supposed to get big enough to eat everything, so potentially he could eat whole-ass stars. There's also Gigantian in Transformers Cybertron, which is mistaken for a whole supernova when scanned. So if Unicron's big enough to eat all worlds, including that one, it would imply a big enough size that he could eat a planet that's so large that it is mistaken for a solar system. This is also by virtue of the whole growing the more he eats things, he could reach a scale akin to solar systems or galaxies. But there are two more concrete things that can help give us a small idea on how big the truest form of multiversal Unicron is. The first is the Alternity. In the story From Here to Alternity, we learn that the true form of the Alternity straddle multiple parallel worlds. Now when it says world, it's not referring to planets, because when they mention planets explicitly, they use the word planet. For instance, on the 4 outer planets of the solar system, large marks resembling the claws of a beast has simultaneously appeared. That's a quote from the same area. They even use world to describe the universal stream, world ID Primax 109.0 beta, which refers to the universe from which Convoy Vibrant Red or Alternity Optimus Prime originates. This Primax beta thing is like a way to designate in the continuity what each universe is. As such, the Alternity is so big that they straddle multiple universes. This obviously means they're much bigger than multiple universes, but if you were to just be anal enough to use the actual definition of straddling, that is, to have 2 legs on either side of something, then that would mean the space between their feet when standing straight up is wide enough to hold at least 2 universes, maybe more. This calc is going to be really silly, but hold my Bloody Mary because I think it's funny. When using this image of the Alternative Optimus Prime figure, then assuming the space between his feet could contain 2 universes and measuring that compared to his height, the lowballed size of Alternative Optimus Prime would be 442,428,395,752 light years. For reference, this is how big the observable universe is next to Alternative Optimus Prime. This is arguably still a lowball due to his nature as a higher dimensional being too. Why is this relevant? Well, the Alternity have at points seeked out Vector Prime for aid, and Vector Prime is a higher dimensional being in his truest form as well, likely on a similar scale to them. Vector Prime has stated that Unicron barely even notices his presence. Unicron might be on such a scale that he doesn't even understand the idea that Vector Prime actually exists. Now if you want a big number, I could do something silly and scale Unicron size to the Alternity relative to how big your average avatar of Unicron is to the average Cybertronian. And not gonna lie, I'm tempted to do that just to see what the results would be. But I think we can safely say that generally, Unicron should be so much bigger than the Alternity that he barely even registers their presence. Certain avatars of Unicron might notice them, incarnations and iterations of him within the totality of Transformers, but the truest identity of Unicron at the heart of all things is on such a grand scale that the Alternity and Vector Prime are literally nothing to him. In fact, you could argue that the big number that I would get from scaling Unicron size relative to the Alternity would be an underestimation, because Unicron is literally on a higher dimensional plane of existence to them. More than the Alternity, more than the 13 Primes, more than the VOC, he transcends all of them. So with that in mind, fuck it, let's just get some wacky numbers. Taking the US Marvel Comics Unicron size, as that's the original Unicron that made the whole ancient being origin, and comparing him to the official size of Optimus Prime from the Marvel Comics, well, we don't actually know how big Optimus is in the comics. But the comic does have official heights for the likes of Bumblebee and Devastator, who are roughly within a meter of the heights given for the Sunbow characters. So we can just use the same 6 meter Optimus Prime height for this as well. This makes Marvel Unicron 55,539,654 times taller than Optimus Prime. For reference, Earth's diameter is only about 7 million times the height of an average human male. Using this difference and applying it to Alternative Optimus Prime, multiversal Unicron's highballed but also lowballed because he should be infinitely bigger than anything, height would be around 2.457 to the power of 19 light years tall, or 24 quintillion 572 quadrillion 320 trillion light years if you want an actual number. That is 264 million times the size of the observable universe. And again, this was just for fun. As said, this calculation is both a highball and a lowball. Highball in that it is calc stacking on top of a calc that requires anal analyzing of the semantic meaning behind a statement that's not meant to be taken as literally as they can literally hold 2 universes between their feet, but also a lowball, because Unicron should be so big that our 3-dimensional measurements no longer apply. I mean, the Alternity are already that large, and then the 13 and the VOC are beyond even them, and then Unicron and Primus are beyond even them. So really, you can never put a number on the full scope of Unicron's size. He is at least beyond 20 spatial temporal dimensions, but to my knowledge, you could reasonably argue even higher than that. And this is where I realize I've actually forgotten one major appearance, Unicron from the 2004 Armada video game. This one should be simple. In the bad ending, you can see how big Unicron is relative to Cybertron, so using the same Cybertron is as big as Earth arguments from before, we can measure Unicron's size here to be roughly 4,906.5 kilometers. But that's his planet mode. To figure out the robot, I took Unicron's Supreme Class action figure, which I do own, and measured the size of him relative to his planet mode, as this model never transformed, but it looks to have the same transformation sequence, and the Unicron trilogy was rather slavish to its toy designs. Using that, Unicron is about 35 centimeters tall, and the planet is about 15 to 20 centimeters wide. Roughly, this makes video game Unicron's height 11,448.5 kilometers, so canonically a bigger boy than the linkage comic version. So here's the height chart of all the Unicrons aside from the true Unicron and some of the small ones, and indeed, Unicron is bigger than Gurren Lagann at his truest size, making the thumbnail of this video not clickbait. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. This was just a fun video I wanted to do because I thought it'd be funny to do. Special thank you to the Burger King, of whom helped me with this video quite a lot. Couldn't have done it without you, mate. It was, you know who you are, it was a great help. Yeah, that's the video. See ya, fuckers.